Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network, where we encourage everyone to find the joy in listening at an elevated level. Our show today is the Corner Bookstore, and our topic is the joy of reading with publisher Ann O'Connell. My lovely friend and partner, DIANN BOEHM, has the day off. We're missing you, DIANN, but we're celebrating Ann. Ann has been on our platform before, and she continues to bring forth incredible content, really supporting and celebrating authors and getting the word out there. Today, we're looking specifically at children's books, and we are thrilled to welcome Ann to the program. Welcome.
Hi, Dr. Jacalyn. Thank you so much for having me.
So nice to have you, and all the work that you're doing with your publishing company. It's remarkable. And there's been an evolution since when I first met you to where you are today. You're fully booked. You're just telling me that 2023 booked out. Congratulations, Ann.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been quite a journey, but very, very enjoyable, and it really gives me great pleasure to help authors, bring their stories to the world. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And you really help people have their dreams come true. And as you know, during the holidays, there are a lot of wishes children have for wonderful things to happen. And the authors whom you're supporting give that gift of joy for families to take a book and to read it to children, even for themselves. DIANN always talks about how children's books are not just for children. So tell us how you got started on your journey, and to be a publisher like you are, that's really tremendous. Tell us more.
Okay, well, it's been a really amazing journey. Most of my professional career, I worked in public relations, event management, media relations, and all that. Fast forward, probably in my mid to late 40s, wrote my first book myself and had it traditionally published, and really loved the process. At the same time, I was sort of playing around with the idea of a fiction, wrote that, sent it out to agents, and had some, little bit of interest in it at the time. Self-publishing was just becoming, a thing. And I wound up self-publishing both that and my second novel. And then I started teaching people how to do that. And it just kind of naturally evolved into, from teaching people how to, write and publish, to establishing and formalizing the process really with the publishing company in 2016, OC Publishing. And so since then, we've published, different versions of different books, more than 60 titles. And, things have snowballed, and we're enjoying it. And I have amazing creative people that I work with, editors, designers, illustrators, and of course the authors, who are absolutely incredible. And I have probably about 10 authors that I work with, who all continue to, pump out new material. So right now, I'm not taking on any new authors, but as you said, we've fully booked this year. We put out 7 titles, or we're, today is launch day for our 7th title this year, and we're booked for next year. So I certainly can't complain. It's been quite a ride.
That is a great place to be. Congratulations, especially on number 7.
Thank you.
And you talked about self-publishing. There's indie publishers, there's hybrid. Can you walk us through the various types and what are the pros and cons?
Sure. As I said, my first book was traditionally published. And what that basically means is a publishing company will take on your project, and from soup to nuts, from the beginning, from the editing through to the publishing, will put out your book at no charge to you. The traditional model is not, there's no fee to the author, but because there is no fee, then the royalties are typically, a very small percentage, because, publishers need to to recoup their costs. So there's usually about a 10% royalty rate. Segue into self-publishing, whereby the author takes on that entire process themselves. So they find the editors themselves, they find the designers. You want to make sure, if you are self-publishing, that you don't say, oh, I've edited my own book, and that's just a big no-no because people will know. So the self-publishing model is, taking it on totally yourself, finding a platform for distribution or selling them out of your trunk. And then the hybrid model that I use is a real combination between the traditional and self-publishing. It's a fee to publish model, and it combines, I follow exactly the same process as a traditional publisher would. And I really encourage anybody who's researching hybrid companies to really dig deep and ask some of the tough questions. What are the costs? How is the book distributed? Who are the editors and designers? Make sure that they're professional. But there's a lot of different variations on that same theme, the hybrid theme. I call it partner publishing because I make sure that the authors are involved every step of the way. And the cost can vary. The range is about $3,000 to $6,000 from beginning to end, and that will vary depending on if you're having illustrations done, the length of the manuscript, the length, the number of hours that it will take. So that's kind of in a nutshell, 3 very broad categories of publishing. But within those 3 categories, there's going to be a lot of variations on the theme.
Thank you so much, Anne. What is the version called where you get a big check? They sent you a check. What is that one called?
If you find it, please tell me.
Here's $50,000. Yay!
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So that doesn't really happen.
No. I mean, sometimes the stars align, the planets align, and there's a windfall, and Oprah reads your book, and Reese puts it on her book club, and those things just kind of explode. But even very well-known, famous authors will probably tell you, like, it doesn't happen overnight, and there's a lot of roadblocks along the way. And I forgot to mention, sometimes in a traditional publishing model with some of like the big 5, the Random House or the Simon and Schuster and that kind of thing, oftentimes they will give an author an advance, but that advance will go toward royalties down the road. So if you do get an advance from a traditional publisher, that will go against book sales. So as books are selling, once you meet that amount that you might have been paid in advance, then you would start seeing royalties.
Thanks for explaining that. And just another question. If you are able to work with one of the big 5, is that always because of the content that you've written, or could it be because of who you know?
I think it's a combination. I mean, any publisher that is, a bona fide publisher, including, OC Publishing, a hybrid publisher, will vet manuscripts. There was the time of vanity publishing, and there are still some vanity publishers out there that have kind of given self-publishing and hybrid publishing a bit of a bad name, that will take any manuscript on and not really put it through any kind of a process. So the important thing to remember is, even the big traditional publishing companies have what they would call a slush pile, and that's manuscripts that have come in that acquisitions editor will hopefully at some time get to. But when you talk about the who it's and most of the big traditional publishing companies require that manuscripts are agented, which means that you have an agent representing you. So if you find an agent who likes your manuscript, because it's very well written, it's something different, but it's commercial because, people want to take on projects that are going to sell. So it's got to be something that is contemporary and, relevant today. So that agent often will be connected in some way to, a publishing house or an editor at a publishing house. So, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a combination of writing a really good manuscript, finding, an agent that is interested in taking on, and matching with a publishing house that is looking for that particular genre at that time. And sometimes what also happens is, it takes a couple years in the traditional sense for a project to come to fruition. And I'm even seeing that now in my company, because there's a lot of projects in the pipeline and coming down the pike. So it does take a while from manuscript to publication. And in that time, during that time frame, things that are, relevant and now might have changed at that point. So when you're doing your research, you might be saying, oh my goodness, memoirs are so hot today. Well, they may not be 2 years from now. So it's really important to kind of keep your finger on the pulse and watch what's happening, and, look at the bestseller lists and, see where you go. Having said that, I always say, write the story that you're meant to write. Write what you're passionate about, so that the process isn't painful and it's enjoyable. And then at the end of the day, see where what you've written might fit or might be of interest.
Great expert insights. Thank you so much. So today is a celebration. You said the 7th book launch. Tell us about the book, about the author. What do we need to know?
Well, thank you so much. And it's the 7th title that we've released in 2022. So which is kind of crazy to think about. But today we are celebrating the launch of a children's picture book that is so joyful. When I was working on it, it just made me smile. Every time I looked at the manuscript, every time I saw a new sketch or illustration, it just made me smile. It is Orange Kitty and the Mouse Parade, and it's written and illustrated by E.M. Gales. And Elizabeth is her name, is also here in Halifax, where I'm located, where OC Publishing is based. And she is a retired administrator for seniors' homes. So most of her career, she worked in healthcare with, the elderly, and fairly recently moved from British Columbia to Nova Scotia, from coast to coast, and retired from her, her lifelong profession, but always had this desire to explore her creative side. And this book is, not only is it creative, but it's fun. It's, like I said, colorful and joyful. And we've had some really amazing advance reviews. And her work has been compared to Dr. Seuss. And we did an interview with her earlier this week, and somebody said that her work reminded them of Walt Disney. So that's pretty amazing company to be in.
Oh my goodness, that is tremendous. Congratulations to Elizabeth
Thank
and
you.
to you.
Thank you.
A question I have for you, for inquiring minds. So since you do a lot of work with children's books, is it important that the book is a certain size, or that it's paper, or that it's hardback? What do you think what's the preference?
Well, that's a really, really good question. And each of those questions sort of would be spurred by, a particular audience. So if it's the size of the book, oftentimes if a teacher is reading, they want to be able to hold the book up. So, the kids are sitting in front of you, so you want it to be a nice size. This one is a little larger than normal. This one is... it's an 8.5 by 11, this way, but this way, because I'm going to share with you when I mentioned to the author that I usually do like an 8.5 by 8.5, which might be a little too technical, but she said, but there's a spread that I need the space for. And I had to agree with her. Check out this spread. Like how
Wow.
incredible is that?
Beautiful.
So I'll just finish answering your question. But we also, of course, all the children's books I do in both hard and soft covers. So this has a nice spine for when it's sitting on the shelf. So there's a lot of considerations when you're thinking about whether you're going to do a soft or a hardcover. I always recommend doing both in children's books. The main reason you would do the main reason I do a hardcover in a children's book is because most libraries prefer a hardcover. So if a library is going to purchase copies of your book, they prefer it to be in hardcover because it's more durable. They have, some libraries, I mean, right now, everybody's budgets are kind of tight, but libraries tend to have, a budget to purchase new books, but they're only going to purchase, 1 or 2 copies per, library. So they can afford to pay a little bit extra because a hardcover can be very costly. So your hardcover isn't going to be the one that sells great amounts on Amazon. So you want it to be affordable. So that's why you might do a soft cover. The same thing goes for, when you choose what size of book that you want to do. We're also celebrating today. I'll segue just a little bit because we're talking about sizes here. We're also celebrating today the first anniversary of this beautiful children's book, Timothy Titus Terence O'Toole and the Dragon. And this is, I wanted to bring it to your attention in memory of the author Jackie Arneson, who passed away last year, just before the book launched, which was very sad, but she knew it was coming and she was very excited about it. And this, you can see the difference in size. This is an 8.5 by 8.5. So you can see the difference in the size of these books. One of the things about, a book that's this big in format is that it takes up a fair bit of shelf space in a bookstore. So if you walk into a children's bookstore, have a look at, what books are facing forward. So for a bookstore to choose to have Orange Kitty forward facing for people to see means it takes up a lot of shelf space, which is a huge consideration when you're a bookstore manager. So does that answer the question?
That's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you
Mhm.
very much.
Mhm.
So are you going to bless us with some reading today?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, please do.
So, as I said, when I was working on Orange Kitty and the Mouse Parade, it brought me great joy. Before I was in a lifetime career in public relations, I was a preschool teacher. So we've kind of come full circle, and one of children's books is only one of the genres that I publish, but wanted to really highlight that today as we're in the holiday season. And I really think reading to children is so important, developing a love of literacy. So the gift of reading is really an amazing thing. And you'll see some of the other titles that I've published behind me, but we can't talk about them all because half of the titles I've published are. So Orange Kitty and the Mouse Parade is a beautiful, colorful, rhyming counting book. So I'm just going to read a few pages so you can get a feel for Orange Kitty. Orange Kitty has a favorite spot. It's not too cold. It's not too hot. A quiet place at the end of the hall, the long, narrow hall with the bright yellow wall. Orange Kitty sees a little blue door, a little door just an inch from the floor. How cute is that? Make sure that you can see he's thinking, what's going to come out of that door? Curious, she stares and stares and stares and stares some more. See a little sweat, bead of sweat rolling down. She stares until, yawning a great big yawn. How cute is that?
Very cute.
Her long, great big yawn. She closes an eye and does not spy one little mouse peek out and look about, out from the door, just an inch from the floor. I'm just trying to figure out which side to look at. One little mouse with top hat and tails beckons to others, his sisters and brothers. Throwing the door open, he shouts, "Yippee! Time for a parade on this grand promenade." Two baton-twirling mice leap out with grace, right in front of Orange Kitty's sleeping face. Kitty's so tired, knows no regrets at missing all the fabulous pirouettes.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
It is great.
Can we do one more page?
Of course, please.
Oh my goodness. This one's my favorite. Three happy mouse clowns tumble out the door. They stumble and roll all about the floor. Three silly mouse clowns with big red noses, delighting others with amusing poses. As Orange Kitty dreams on in the hall, the long narrow hall with the bright yellow wall, four stilt-walking mice sway up, up on high, on tall, skinny stilts that wobble. Oh my!
Wow, that's fabulous.
Isn't that something?
Really good.
So anyway, that's a teaser. So it goes all the way up to 55 mice. So the very last, hang on a second. So 10. Okay, so you have to see I already showed you the spread. So here's the bakers that come out. So these are, and so each page is a wonderful counting lesson. And kids look to make sure that each little mouse has the number on their outfit. Counting, making sure that we haven't miscounted. All the while, Orange Kitty slumbers away. So this is the first in a planned series. There'll be another one coming out.
Absolutely love it.
Isn't it adorable?
It's fantastic. So, Anne, a question that just came to mind when you were speaking about the counting.
Mhm.
Do your authors typically have an audience with children before they get the book published and they'll read to them and see what their thoughts are? Or do they just say, hey, you know what? We're just putting this out there and they're going to like it?
I think it varies. As you know, DIANN, and I wanted to also highlight, we've put out, of the 7 books that we put out this year, 4, let me see, one, I'm looking at the list on my wall. 4 of them have been children's books. And of course, one fairly recently was Charlie and the Tire Swing. And this is Diane Floyd BOEHM, who is your co-host on the Corner Bookstore, who I've been working with since the very beginning. She was my first official author, and we have published 6 children's books together. So in the case of Diane, to answer your question, as an elementary school teacher and a mother, she would test all of her stories, and of course, she's been a storyteller. Most of the children's authors I work with, are storytellers at heart. And with Jackie also had Hambone, Why Pigs Have Curly Tails, that came out the year before. And just also to highlight, Jackie, who has sadly passed away, her first book, this book, was published when she was 87 years old. So it's never too late. She was 87. And her stories she told to her children for years. And it wasn't until, many years later that one of her daughters, who I actually worked with at a PR agency in Toronto many, many moons ago, had seen that I had started a publishing company. And she said, Mom, I know a publisher. I'm going to reach out to her. And I think that your stories need to come out. The Purple Frog, that's behind me here, that author, Angela Jeffries, who is also here in Nova Scotia, that's actually quite a fun story. And she was shortly after I published Diane's first children's book. Angela and I met at a women's conference, and I was selling books, and she stood in front of me and told me the story of the Purple Frog. and it had been a story that she had told her daughter as a bedtime story and made it up, as years went by. So I guess that's a very long-winded way of answering your questions. That yes, I think most people who want to write children's books or have written children's books would definitely test them out in the children in their lives, whether they're an elementary school teacher, as DIANN was, years ago, or with their own children. So anybody who loves children's literature is always looking for an audience for their book. And I'll to share with you with Orange Kitty. And as you mentioned, DIANN says that, children's books are for all ages, and I couldn't agree more. I have such a passion for children's books, and we called it kitty lit when I was studying children's literature in university. My niece, who's an elementary school teacher, was visiting the day that the first package of books of Orange Kitty arrived. And my mom, who's 98, was sitting in the living room, and my mom also has dementia. Marianne, my niece, started reading to her, and she was riveted. And so that is, I think that's really great advice for anybody who's a caregiver, that, children's books can be a really nice way to spend time with your loved one, not just, children, but elderly as well. So
That's a great point, Anne. And I really like, especially with Orange Kitty, the rhyming. I think that's really
yes,
nice.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice book. Well, we're also, and just so I don't forget, I'm just looking at my piles. We're also today, one of the 7 books that we've launched this year. Last month, we launched the 3rd in this series, Lily's Egypt Adventure by Cindy Tingley. And today is actually the official launch day of the virtual book tour for Lily's Egypt Adventure. And this is, like I said, the 3rd in a series of children's Bible stories. And it's a first chapter book for early readers, so middle grade. And with each chapter is a lovely sketch. We have a wonderful illustrator who did the cover design and all of the interior sketches, who's in Montreal. Her name is Lara Chauvin. And as you can see, it's not a huge book. And I'd also like to say that we've actually gone to recycled paper, so environmentally conscious too. But this particular book in the series follows Lily, the donkey, and the Holy Family as they escape Bethlehem to get out of the clutches of King Herod, who has put out a decree to kill all male children under the age of 2. So this picks up the story as they're arriving in Egypt, and Lily and her furry friends, gather more friends and basically spread the word of love and kindness and forgiveness. So we're on tour with Lily this month.
Can you share a little bit about what is a virtual book tour and how can people be a part of it?
Oh, sure. Because there's so much opportunity online, there's so many people who have book review blogs. There's booktubers, there's book talkers on TikTok, and lots of opportunities, beyond in your own community, doing the reading at a local bookstore or a launch. And of course, during the pandemic, everything went virtual. So we really expanded that opportunity, and took advantage of that, not so positive experience, and turned it into a positive. So, what we'll do is we'll send out inquiries to book reviewers, whether they're doing, if they have their own blog online, or like I said, they have a YouTube channel or a TikTok. Then we invite them to review a book, and we try and sort of encapsulate it into a certain time frame, because if there are a certain number of book sales, say, through Amazon, as the book sales increase, then so does your rating, and that's always a really nice thing to see a book, launch as a number 1, on Amazon. So that's kind of in a nutshell. So, finding the people who are reviewing books, getting a hold of their email address or messaging them on social media, inviting them to review your book, whether, you can do it year round. It doesn't have to be connected to a specific, what we call a virtual book tour. But oftentimes if you, kind of put it together in a 1-month tour, then, you get the buzz going and the excitement going. And of course, you offer copies of the book. I offer whatever format people prefer. So sometimes I'm sending a print copy, but oftentimes they'll, take a PDF or other ebook format, whether it's, an EPUB or a Mobi. But then you have to sit back and accept what comes. So you hope for the 5 stars.
Give and take.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you do some additional reading from the other books that you have?
Yes, I would love to. I'd love to read from Jackie's book because we're celebrating the anniversary today. Timothy Titus Terrence O'Toole and the Dragon. How's that for a tongue twister? Try and say that 3 times fast. So, and she said it was dedicated to her children, Trish and Barbara, and grandchildren, Emma and Andrew, with a special nod to Barb's childhood friend, Timmy C., without whom this tale would not have been imagined. So this is a story for Timmy T. Timothy Titus Terrence O'Toole was a very ordinary boy. He was 7 years old. He had curly red hair and freckles. He played baseball in the summer and hockey in the winter. He must be Canadian, right? He loved chocolate pudding and hated spinach. He collected gum and string and stones and sometimes frogs in his pocket. In fact, everything about Timothy Titus Terrence O'Toole was very, very ordinary, except for one thing. He had a dragon. Well, I know you're saying, pooh, there are no such thing as dragons. But you're wrong. Timothy Titus Terrence O'Toole really did have a dragon, and this is how it happened. So here's Timothy in the playground, a little frog sticking out of his pocket. I'll give a shout out. The illustrations of this book were done by a woman named Ravin Poole. One day, on the way home from school, Timothy heard a funny noise. So this is telling you how the dragon came to be. Came from behind a lilac bush at the end of his driveway. That sounds like someone crying, he said, as he crept quietly up to the bush and peered through the blooms. Lo and behold, there was a dragon. Timothy rubbed his eyes and looked again. The dragon was still there. It looked really, really big. Timothy thought it was probably 100 feet long. Actually, it was just a little dragon, only about 20 feet long. Its scales were a muddy, froggy green, and it was crying big, salty tears. Oh, don't cry, dragon. Whatever is the matter? Said Timothy. Oh, woe is me, cried the dragon, splashing Timothy with big, salty tears. I'm lost, and I have nowhere to go, and I'm so lonely. Poor old dragon.
Aww.
So sad. Look at the big tears. Oh, how sad, said Timothy. Why, I'm sure you can stay with us. I'll go ask Mother. And he ran toward the house shouting, Mother, come quick, come quick. Mrs. O'Toole ran out. What's wrong, Timothy? I found a lost and lonely dragon, Timothy said. I said it could stay with us. That's okay, isn't it? Mrs. O'Toole spied the dragon peeking out from behind her lilac bush.
I love the visuals.
Aren't they great? One more page. She shrieked and threw her apron over her head. The dragon tried to hide under the lilac bush while turning bright yellow with fright. Timothy hugged his dragon and said, Mother, you've scared it. It's only a little dragon, and I'm sure it will be no trouble. Please say it can stay, please. Mrs. O'Toole peered cautiously over her apron at the dragon. Well, all right, but I don't know what your father will say. And with that, she went back inside the house to finish making supper. So you'll have to buy Timothy Titus Terrence O'Toole and the Dragon to see what Timothy's father said, and the neighbors.
Oh, the
Wonderful
suspense
story.
is building. I read it already, so I have a copy, so
Right.
thank you. And I did do a book review on that. So if anybody's
Yes.
interested, you can go over to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio, and you can look for the Dr. Jacalyn's book club.
Thank
So
you.
I love it. You know, the thing that comes through from the reading of both books and just what you're talking about is just pure joy. It's so nice to get away from all the stress of life and just have some time for reading and just feeling good, right?
Yes. Oh, 100%. And that's why, I will always, have children's books as the collection of genres that I publish. I've contemplated writing children's books myself, but when I'm writing, I write cozy mystery. So I'm hoping I do plan to take a sabbatical soon to work on my next book because it's a continuation of a series that I started. And so, stay tuned for that. And when we get back after sabbatical after next year, that'll be one of the books I put out. But we'll have another two children's books that'll come out next year. So lots
Anything you
happening.
can tell us about them?
Oh, sure. Our first title that's scheduled to come out in February, so the first 2023 title, is called Shanti Fights for Her Rights. And it's a middle grade novel, and it revolves around trying to end child marriages in India. So the main character is a 14-year-old girl named Shanti, who is her parents have arranged for her to be married, and she begins to gather groups of girls to try and find a way to convince their parents to let them stay in school. So that's really exciting. In the spring, in early spring, we'll be publishing Linda Faye Schmidt's next novel. Will be coming out in April. It's a women's fiction called The Rogue Scorpion. So that's a sort of an inner exploration story. Kind of looking to find yourself and your identity. Revolves around a young woman, probably in her early 20s. And later in the spring or early summer, another children's book. It's a new author we're working with, but although she's been a Paradise writer for many years, and we actually taught preschool together, Barb Miller, and she is writing a story about a puggle named Zeffie, and so it's Zigzag Zeffie. And then later in the year, we will be publishing the sequel to Diane Floyd Bain's YA biographical historical fiction Rise. The title is still to be determined, so that'll be coming out in late 2023. So lots
Wow,
going
how
on.
exciting. We just had Linda Faye Schmidt here.
Yes,
I
what a
think last
wonderful
week.
interview. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
That was wonderful.
she's a sweetheart. So hi
Mm-hmm.
to Linda if you're out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that the powerful subject about exploring arranged marriages. I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. And it's a middle grade novel, so you're looking at kids sort of 12 to 16ish, I guess maybe a little bit younger. And we've had incredible support from a big nonprofit organization in India that focuses on that very issue. And the head of that organization has given testimonial, and she heads up these small groups of girls in small rural towns to try and work with parents in understanding that child marriages are not appropriate, and that it's time to allow their girls to continue their education. And it's a powerful story.
That is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we can support their work, we'd be happy to.
Oh, thank
So,
you. Well,
yeah.
definitely.
For
have a look.
sure.
Yay.
And by the way, Linda Faye Schmidt is watching. Hi, thanks for watching. That's excellent. So, Anne, we've actually come to the end of this show, and it's been chock full of fabulous information and celebrations. I'm loving Orange Kitty, and I love how you walked us through what are the considerations even for a bookstore manager or for a librarian and for people who are considering putting out books to take some of these things in consideration when they're looking at size, they're looking at paperback, hardback, ebook, etc. Something we didn't really touch on. Ebook, is that a winner for children?
Honestly don't know. My process, I don't tend to publish ebook for children's books. I do the softcover and hardcover, but for some I do. For Diane's books, we also do ebooks. So, I personally, I like to encourage kids to step away from the screens and the technology, and, having a book in hand when you're, sitting in bed with your little and, reading a story together, just having, taking time away from the screen. But that's not to say that, people aren't also interested in, in ebook versions. People have, colorful, readers, iPads and Kindles. So, there's a market for it. So I don't want to diminish the benefit of that, but it's not something that I tend to focus on. But I'm a little old-fashioned.
Well, it sounds like give people variety and let them choose.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations to you and to your authors.
Thank you.
We have your information up, and I'm going to spotlight you again. Please let people know how to contact you if they can't read the information or they're listening on a radio station or a podcast platform.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. You can visit ocpublishing.ca or .com, and all of our links to social media will be there. On Twitter, it's at ocpubhfx. Same on TikTok, Facebook, OC Publishing, and YouTube. Our YouTube channel is OC Publishing as well. And that pretty much covers it. But if you go to www.ocpublishing.ca or .com, you'll get to our main website that shows all the links. You can sign up for our newsletter and see all the books that we publish. If you're a retailer, some kind of a bookseller, you can also download our full catalog in order form there. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Anne. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm sorry Diane wasn't with us today, but she can catch the replay. And thanks, Linda Faye Schmidt, for watching and for commenting. There's a bunch of other people who were also watching, but they didn't comment. So we love when people comment. We love that you're watching. Thank you. Yay. We appreciate it. And look forward to
And we appreciate
celebrating.
You. We appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you, Anne. All right, take care and wishing you continued success. Bye for now.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye. And again, everyone, thank you so much for being part of this journey with us. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my own book that I'm co-authoring with Mariska Duprier. It will be available on December 14th. And I just want to acknowledge the people who helped make this happen. If you're not aware, we have a team here at USA Global TV and Radio. The team is called Elevated Listeners. They're one of our teams. And these people are elevated listeners. They've taken the power of listening and joined our team and joined our mission to help spread awareness about how important it is to listen at an elevated level. And they have also been part of this project to help teach children and their families elevated listening skills. So we've got Caroline Heward, Debbie Wilson, Roland Friedel, Diane Floyd BOEHM, Sonia Moldina, Red O'Laughlin, Janetta Barry, Hyatt Ives, who are all represented by animal characters, as you can see here on the book cover. Debbie, for example, is the cow, Belle the cow right there. So each of these people have just done a great job in being available to be part of this book and helping design their character. And so the book will be available on the 14th on Amazon. And I want to give a special thanks to Mariska Duprier in New Zealand, who co-authored this with me, and to Red O'Loughlin, who is my editor and book coach and dear friend. Thank you again. So that's all we have for right now. We're coming right back with the film and music show. I hope you'll stay with us. Following that, it's The Wise Ones and then Talking Heads with Red O'Loughlin. Take care, everyone. Bye, Anne.